Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about house security and how to protect your house from intruders and potential natural or human influence disasters. I'm going to try to break this down into sections so that it's easier to follow, easier to understand. If you have any questions or you want to find out something or we didn't cover something in this, then shoot me an email, drop me a comment in the comments. You can also, subscribe so that you can be notified when we post new videos. And as we've said before, if there are topics that you would like to talk about, by all means, please let us know. In the description under the video will be the links to the website and to my email. Plus you can also leave comments on the YouTube channel itself or the Facebook page. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the outside. Okay, so some of the things that you want to push away from the house as far as possible are your hedges, your bushes, trees, any large rocks. You want to try to push these as far back away as you can. Bushes and hedges, if they're up next to the house, can provide concealment from, out from the road or from the sidewalk of people or intruders trying to get into your house. So you want to push those as far away from the house as possible, like up next to the sidewalk for those that live in urban areas. If you're in the country, obviously, you want them back away from the house as well. The same is true with trees. Trees, especially those that are 12 inches or better in diameter, can give an intruder the potential cover, something that they can hide behind that you can't shoot them at. So you want to push those kind of away from the house. Also, during a fire, the bushes and these trees can, or even a tornado or strong wind scenario, the trees can fall on the house and take out the house. Now, I realize that this may be a little trickier in town, but you can, and having shade is obviously good, but you got to balance that with, do you want to take the risk of a tree falling onto the house? It may be smarter or wiser to put some type of an evergreen tree around the house. These can provide shade, but at the same time, they're not as likely to actually take out the house. Again, it's up to you. It's your decision. All I can do is give you some recommendations, some ideas, something to think about. So now, before we get into like the actual securing of the house itself and points of access, let's talk about the different types of houses. So there's different types of houses. There are, single family, duplex, apartments, townhouses, condos. All these are different types. Okay, so while there is a lot of commonality between each of these, there are some nuances that are specific to a particular type of structure. So a single family house typically has, several windows, has at least 2 or more points of entry into the house, usually a front door, a back door. There may be also a deck or patio in which there are sliding or French doors. So all of these are points of entry. So all of these are things that we're going to want to think about when we get into this in just a minute. When it comes to duplex, depending on the duplex, it's going to be similar to like a townhouse or even a single family house. The duplex has basically 2 residences side by side. So you essentially have the same thing. You have points of entry, which again, are typically 2 doors, front door and a back door. The back door potentially could be within inside of the garage. Single family houses, if they have an attached garage, can also have a point of entry, and that may be the back door, quote unquote. But they're also going to have a lot of windows typically. So there are several points of entry that you have to kind of be thinking about when you're talking about security. Condos, apartments, they're kind of pretty much the same. Folks that are on the ground floor of a condominium or an apartment are going to have the same types of points of entry as, a single family house. Typically though, there's only going to be one point of entry, well, 2 points of entry, depending on the way that it's constructed. In the apartment in which we live on the ground floor, there is a small patio which has a sliding glass door, but there's also going to be a point of entry from within the hallways. Okay. Now, once you get onto the second, third floor, you still have that second point of entry, but it becomes a little more of a challenge to access that particular point of entry. So the likelihood of an intruder getting in through those is a little less. It's also going to depend on what side the apartment faces or the condo faces. If the point of entry from the outside faces like the parking lot or the road, then it's going to be less likely that somebody's going to try to come in there versus a side that may face a wooded area or an open field in which there is, in which there is no public access. So, so we talked about the different points of entry, now we're going to talk about some of the construction types. So, construction types, there are houses that are made of brick and block, which are probably the most secure, the most able to be protected against entry into your house. Stick-built homes, which are typically homes that are built on site or on location, at least for the most part. There may be some prefabrication involved. That's done off-site and then they're brought in. Typically, a lot of raftering and stuff are done in a factory, and then those rafters are brought in and built on site. A modular home. Most of the home is prefabbed in a factory or a plant somewhere, and then brought as a unit and then assembled on site. And then you have like mobile homes. You have the double wides and single wide typical mobile homes. Construction of those are usually not quite as significant as a stick-built home, or even definitely not of a brick or block home. In mobile homes, the studs that are typically used are either the aluminum ones, which are the ones for the more newer ones, and the older style, probably 80s and beyond, maybe even 90s. I'm not sure about those. But instead of having a 2x4 for the walls, you have the studs are made out of usually like 1x4s. So they're not as sturdy as, like I said, the brick and block homes. So again, the access that we talked about kind of sort of during the first part. Typical access is going to be via the doors, which again, there's usually a front and a back door, or front and side door, and potentially a third that leads onto a patio or a deck or even a balcony. So those are the points of entry. Now, when we get back to the floors and things and the construction type, so there is another access point to a house. It's basically through the walls, because a typical wall of a typical stick-built home is 1 2x4, which is actually 1 3/4 by 2 or 3 3/4, because a finished 2x4 is not actually 2x4. Back in the old days, some of the older homes, like there was a Sears and Roebuck kit home in which they actually were 2x4. So, so basically, if you think about the wall of a stick-built house, so you have the siding, which is typically vinyl of some kind, and then you have a sheathing insulation that's usually about maybe 1/2 of an inch. Then you have a plywood, which is probably maybe 3/4 of an inch. Then you have a space, and every usually 16 inch on center, you have a 2x4, and then with some insulation in there, and then you have a layer of sheetrock, which is usually about 1/4 of an inch. So altogether, you only have maybe an actual inch of material between you and the outside. So bullets will be able to pass through a typical stick-built modular home or mobile home wall. Okay, this is one of the reasons why those buildings that are designed out of block or brick, and the real brick, not the stucco brick, but the actual brick, can actually provide a bit more of protection against an intruder or an attack from outside of the home. So something to think about, and I'm not trying to scare you, but I want you to be aware of what's going on. So if you are in a home and shots are being fired, or stuff has hit the fan and you're wanting to protect, you're going to want to put the furniture and things, couches, large bookcases, whatever you can, on those outside walls, so that they will provide an additional barrier to rounds coming from outside. With typically people try to secure the door. While that is admirable, it's also something you need to think about. Those are not the only points of entry, as we just discussed. There's a window. There's windows all around the house. Those are the easiest points of access. Patio doors, French doors, the whole door's glass. A lot of the front doors are mostly glass. So, even if you have, 6 bolts and a stake in the floor to prevent the door from being open, that does not necessarily mean that somebody cannot gain access to your home via that door. There is a shutter system. I ran into it first when I was in Germany, and basically it's a metal shutter that rolls down the front of the windows. At the end of this video, I have a slide or a picture that I will put in there to show what these look like. There's also a link to a company so that you can kind of get a look at I don't know anything about this particular company, so I would recommend that you do your own research as far as pricing and stuff. Some of the things that you want to look at, though, to protect those windows is, what wind speeds will they be able to withstand? Um, how well they operate, what's the service of the company. Those are the things, typical things that you would look at when you're evaluating an item or situation. All I'm telling you is there are solutions to help protect the most vulnerable access to your house. Okay. With those in place, and then a good lock system and a good solid door, not some of these doors with the hollow core, but a good solid metal door, then these are going to be able to protect or at least slow down the access of somebody gaining access to your dwelling. So it's something to think about. But again, some of the things, the walls, when we're inside our home, we feel we're safe until we're not. And then we feel violated and then all kinds of bad things. So what I would like you to do is to think about what you can do and what kinds of things would help protect you and keep your family safe from an intruder from outside. When I do readiness plans, this is part of the things that I evaluate to ensure you are as safe as I can make you based on what's there. Okay. Now, these window systems, they are a little expensive. If you have a single family home and it's 2 stories tall or more, you don't necessarily need to put these things on the windows that are set above the 2nd and 3rd floor. Okay. Primarily, you would want these on the 1st floor. So, you're trying to slow down the access of folks getting into the house. Okay. Now, is it going to protect you against everything and every possible attack? Not necessarily. But something is better than nothing. If you do not have, the money, you can afford these kinds of systems. The other thing that you can put on is you can pre-fit like 1-inch plywood for each of your windows. Now, it can get a little expensive depending on the size of your house. But the benefit of doing this is, again, to protect those you care about inside the home against those that want to potentially cause you harm outside of the home. So something to think about. Again, it's going to depend on what the event, the situation is. If it is stuff hit the fan, then basically all bets are off. You're going to want to secure your home as best you can, especially if you intend to shelter in place. If it's a natural disaster, like a hurricane or something, I mean, you see all the time when a hurricane comes in, you see people putting in plywood to protect the windows, the glass panes and stuff. But you also see them screwing them from the outside in. For a hurricane, that's fine. In a stuff hits the fan scenario, that's not fine. You want that stuff on the inside. So you want to screw the plywood in place inside of the house. It's not going to look pretty, or it probably won't look pretty. I mean, you can paint stuff on there or something to make them look prettier, but um, you're going to want to be able to protect yourself. And if the screws are on the outside, I can just come up with a screwdriver and unscrew it and take them off. Yes, it's potential that you can shoot me through there, um, but it's also potential that you won't. So it's up to you. I mean, my recommendations are just that. They're recommendations, they're suggestions, things to make you think of the potential hazards that you might face. Um, so, that's some of the stuff. Um, Access from the roof is probably not as likely. Um, if it is, then there's probably a whole lot of other things that have gone wrong, and you just need to hold on as best you can. One thing that I would suggest, if you are going to use plywood to secure your windows, and this is a stuff hits the fan kind of scenario, you are going to want to have like slits, crosses, so that you can see outside a little bit. And if you have to be able to shoot through those windows. So think of that when you are putting these up, because if everything is completely boarded up, then a potential attacker could be up next to the house before you know it. So in a stuff hit the fan scenario, if you are in this type of a situation, or if you are in a situation such as a natural disaster, an earthquake or something, where there is a potential for what I call the civilized veneer has been stripped away, there are potentials of basically being a stuff has hit the fan scenario. Okay? Meaning there is the potential that people will try to get in order to take the supplies and stuff that you have. If this is a two-story home or building, then I recommend that there be guards posted upstairs looking out the windows in all directions. Now, how many people would it take to guard a 1,700 square foot home? Probably quite a few. So it's going to have to be a roving guard, and you'll have to take turns. So how many ever people there are, then it needs to be split between them. If there's only two, then it's going to be two 12-hour shifts. If you don't, then the potential that somebody can get access to your home and cause you harm or injury or death even, that's a pretty real threat. Okay, and especially in urban areas, and especially in areas where gangs have taken over, and that seems to be becoming more and more predominant across the United States. That's one of the reasons why I recommend that you try to find a group now, before something happens, of like-minded individuals who believe the same things that you believe, because you have to all be on the same page. If not, then the group is going to implode from within. Okay, because you're going to start to get the diversity going on. You're going to start getting confrontations within, and that's something that you don't want. That's why you need to choose folks who believe as you believe. Okay, and I'm not trying to judge anybody. Some people are more compassionate than others. I'm compassionate, but only to a certain point. Once you pass that point, once you start to threaten my family, those that I love or care about, my compassion kind of gets pretty thin. And I'm going to do my best to take you out before you can take them out. So that's just the way it's going to be. Do I want to do stuff like that? No. But, I am in the world in which I live, and I will protect to the best of my ability those that I love and care about in the story. And I've been trained pretty well to do that. So that's the things that I'm going to do. And it's not bravado. It's not, I don't know, it's not whatever. It's just, that's the fact. So that's why I suggest that you find a group of people who think like you, who believe like you, and that you guys band together, because then you can bring the resources of all of you guys into one place. And there's safety in numbers. So the more folks that you have, the more folks that you have for guard duty. In my book, Return to Life, it was kind of a joke, because it was kind of a joke in the Army. The more warm bodies that you had, the less time on guard duty you had to do. And guard duty, there's nothing fun about it, but it is a necessary task that has to be done if you want to ensure the safety. And it's a very serious task. That's why back during early times in the pioneer early West days, if you fell asleep on guard duty, you were pretty much executed, because your falling asleep could allow the enemy to come in and basically kill everybody else while they sleep. In Honduras, when I was down there, one of the trips, we in our base camp, we had 10-foot tall guard towers that surrounded the perimeter of the camp. And in each of these towers was a Honduran guard and a American military MP. Now, one of the things that you have to understand is in Honduras, they have basically what we would call a draft. Everybody does a tour in the military. So everybody, is trained. The difference is in Honduras, it's once you reach a certain height. So you have 13-year-olds primarily as the troops within this Honduran military. In our camp, the first sergeant was 18 and the sergeant major was 21. So they start pretty young, and that's why some of these things with this caravan, every one of those troops or every one of those people, those male individuals, are military trained, just FYI. So, but one time one of the guards, the Honduran guard, fell asleep on guard duty in one of the towers. And the first sergeant marched a squad of 8 guys out to the tower. Each of them had either a bamboo or a cane or a sugar cane stalk. That first sergeant grabbed that kid by the seat of his breeches and the scuff of his neck, threw him out of the window of that 10-foot tower. The kid rolled down the hill into the concertina wire fence, and that squad commenced to beat the fire out of him. So guard duty is very serious. It is not something to be taken lightly, but it is something that is pretty mundane and boring. Now, I don't know that I would have done what that first sergeant did, but that's the way that they work, and that's how serious that particular task is. So, you can't assume that people are not going to be trying to get what you have. Everybody is going to have some amount of fear, and if you are not prepared at all, mentally, physically, spiritually, as we talk about within the core calm, that fear can make you do things and make people that you would never think would ever do something like that, do things that they would not normally ever do in a normal situation. So, it doesn't have to be just, gang members and mobs and mafia and all this stuff. It may be your neighbor, and you guys have had dinner and cookouts for years. But if they're not ready, and if they're, if that if that inclination to cross the line is there already, but it's been held in check because of that civilized veneer, once that gets peeled back like the top of a sardine can, and that darkness comes out, they will do things, and in fact, they're usually worse than some of the ones that do it all the time anyway. So you have to be careful. But like I said, now is the time, before the craziness starts, to find the people who you feel comfortable with, who share your values, who share your beliefs, who share your moral compass, your integrity. This is the time to find those folks. And if later on this thing goes on for some time and others will come in, evaluate the folks that are coming in. In Return to Life, in that book, which is where I really kind of started contemplating a lot of this different stuff. They finally created a committee in which they would talk to everybody coming in, because of incidents that had occurred before when they just let everybody in. It just doesn't work. It will not work. There'll be dissension in the ranks, and you're going to start getting cliques within the community, and the community will basically kill itself. So as hard as it is to make that decision, you may have to make that decision. Somebody's going to have to make that decision. And they just will not be able to stay within the group, okay? And I recommend also that if you are allowing folks from outside, before they are screened and allowed to stay, do not let them see what resources you have available, okay? Because then they will probably try to come back, and once they find some, groups of like-minded as they are. So something to think about. Not to scare you, not to make you afraid. That's not my intent. My intent is to bring these things to your attention. So right now, before the craziness starts, you can think this through in a logical and methodical manner and create the plan of what you're going to do and how you will react to all these different things, so that when this does happen, it's not going to be a shock, it's not going to be a surprise, and you already know what you're going to do because it's already wrote down in this plan, and you have been practicing and rehearsing this plan so that it's automatic. Okay, that's one of the reasons why in the military we do rehearsals, we do rock drills, we do rehearsal drills. It's to work out any bugs or kinks within the plan, but it's also to build the muscle memory so that when we get into battle, we know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Okay, because being in a battle, it's a scary place, it's a scary situation, and essentially, if the stuff hits the fan, you're going to be in a battle. It's going to be a battle for you versus them. But that doesn't mean that we have to lose our human compassion for those that are not as fortunate as we are. Okay? So, So again, ensure that you protect the outside. You start outside, push the stuff away from the house that would potentially give an intruder the ability to get up and into the house. If you can afford them, those exterior rolling shutters are an excellent way to protect not only your windows, but those that are inside from the forces that are outside. Push the trees that are potentially dangerous to the house away from the house so that they won't fall through, that potential for fire in there. If you can afford it, a brick home is probably the best, or a block. I'm not too fond of the block buildings myself. But when it comes to security, those are definitely the better ones. Except for earthquakes. Then you really want a concrete wall, which there are some of those out there. Again, points of entry, the doors, the windows, patio doors, French doors, basement doors. You want to try to find a place within the house that is safe. If somebody does get into the house, identify a location in which you can seek refuge and has as few points of entry. So, like a stairway. Typically, there's usually only one particular stairway or one stairway into like the second floor. At best, two people might be able to get up there at a time. So you have a two-person front. Typically, it's only about one. So having a place next to that is probably one of the better places so that you can, pick them off as they come out. So one other thing I want to talk about are weapons that are probably the best for protection at close quarters. Okay. Now, if you're in the country, odds are you probably already enjoy hunting and you enjoy the outdoor life. So you're going to have, rifles. Rifles are definitely better because you can, be like AT&T, reach out and touch them at a distance. But if you live in an urban area, especially if you're in a house or an apartment, a townhouse, or a condo, you don't want to be shooting a long-range weapon, a rifle, AR-15, AK-47s, whatever it is, inside of there, because then it can penetrate the walls of the house and you may injure somebody in an adjoining apartment or condo or whatever. So for close in-house kind of things in an urban area, where it doesn't, even in a country, but for close in-home situation, I recommend a tactical shotgun. Now, the one that I have is the Remington 570. It's a pump, holds about 7 rounds total between the chamber and the tube where you put the shells in. Using number 7 and number 9 birdshot types is probably the best. Now, all of my weapons are always loaded. The only thing is I do not have a round chambered in the weapon so that it cannot be accidentally fired. So if you have a tactical shotgun and that chunk, that sound that when you chamber a shotgun round, probably 9 out of 10 times that's going to be enough to cause somebody that's trying to get into your dwelling to find someplace that's a little less protected and a little less hazardous to them, because most of those folks are, cowards anyway. That's why they always run in packs. But if you do have to fire, you shoot to kill, aim center mass. And the good thing about it is if you fire a shotgun with the number 7 or number 9, then it's usually not going to penetrate beyond your walls. Okay, so the odds of a round penetrating through and injuring or killing somebody in an adjoining dwelling is a lot less than if you were to try to fire, like I said, an AR-15 or even a 380. Some of the pistols will probably can be shot from one end of an apartment building to another. So things to think about. But being ready, finding a group, understanding what's going on, and having a plan are something that you should really seriously consider. All right. So hope you enjoyed this video. I would ask that you subscribe so that you can get other videos. When we make new ones, give us a thumbs up so that other people can find these videos, so that maybe they can get some tips or some ideas of things that can help them. The website is greatlivingsources.com. My email is guy@greatlivingsources.com. I have 2 Facebook pages. One is GL Sky, which is my pen name for my books. And then there's another one that is Great Living Sources. So, we just ask that you be ready for whatever could happen, and remember the core calm. So, until next time, thank you. Bye.